welcome to my shop, Excel Executive, and thank you for making this purchase. So this is a expense calculator or an expense manager that you can use if you are a small business owner or if you are a freelancer. So let's proceed. So after the welcome page, these are the instructions. I would request that you read these instructions in details. It's just a small page, and this will give you an idea how to use this product in the most efficient manner so that you can get the best value out of it. Now I will proceed with the actual product. So these two sheets are meant to be the places where you will make your entries, and the remaining sheets will give you the analysis that will help you in managing your expenses when it comes to your small business or when it comes to your freelance gig. So the first one is the expense category entry. So this is how I have designed it. What happens is that sometimes when people are entering their expenses, they have to enter a lot of information, especially when it comes to Excel products. So for that, I have divided the entry part into two parts. The first part is where you actually enter the expense category. So what that expense is, their name, what category it is part of, what business unit or project or department it's part of, what is the name of the vendor or the pay, what is the payment method, what is the unit name, what is the unit rate, and if there is any tax applicable on that expense, then that tax rate. So once you enter a category here, and I have given you a very detailed categorization, hopefully this will cover a lot of your issues, but this is supposed to be used as a template. By that, I simply mean is that you are supposed to enter your categories. So here you will enter the expense name. You will put a category on which this expense is part of. You will assign the department, the person from whom or the company from whom you are purchasing that product or service, how you are paying that person, be it cash or a bank transfer or a credit or a debit card, the unit, if you want to enter that, the unit rate, and then the tax rate. So if that expense occurs on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, even on a daily basis, you don't have to enter all these things again and again. You just pick the expense and then that works for you automatically. So this is the part, this is what you might call the expense planning part. So this is the expense, basically the expense name, which you are occurring. So here, the way you enter is that except for this first column, the expense ID, you don't enter anything here. This will be populated automatically. So please don't mess with this. The next part is that you are supposed to write the expense name, you are supposed to write the expense category and ensure that the category name is copied. So let's say these all are related to cost of goods sold. So you have to ensure that cost of goods sold is consistent in each row. The next is the unit. So let's say packaging is part of administration, which might not make sense, but let's go with that. So packaging is part of administration and packaging is also part of client services, and you want to record these two expenses separately. So in that case, you will have two rows for this. So first will be packaging. Everything will be same except for the fact that the business unit is going to change. Maybe the vendor is also the same, the payment method is also the same, the unit rate is also the same, the tax rate is also the same. Because these things most probably will depend on the vendor, let's say. So in this case, you will have two entries for packaging. First will be for the administration department, and the second will be for the client services department. And I would request that please do not delete the categories when going forward. If there is a new category, if there is a new expense, then write it right after the last row. So once that is done, you will be done with the categories, and then you don't have to enter all these fields every time you incur this expense. Now I will move to the next sheet. So this is here where you're supposed to enter the actual expense. So what happens is that it takes the name of your expense and it takes the name of your ID as well, which will be populated automatically. This is why I requested beforehand that please do not delete an expense category ever when you are entering those categories in this sheet. So here, what will happen is that in the first column, you are supposed to select the expense from the drop down, which is coming from the previous sheet. The next is the expense date. So this is the date on which that expense occurred. Then there is the payment deadline. So this is the date on which you are supposed to make the payment. Then there is the payment made on. This is the actual date on which you made the payment. The next is the number of days. If you are not using a service, then in those cases, just enter 1. Do not leave it empty, because if you leave this empty, then it won't calculate anything else, because I am multiplying this with other columns. So if there are, let's say that expense is related to a service and that service happened over a couple of days, you can enter those number of days. But if a number of days is not applicable, then just type in 1. These are the number of units that you purchase. Now you have to keep in mind that the unit rate is already here. So basically you're saying that whatever this is, this expense is, so for 1 unit it takes $100. That is why you can see that amount payable is 200 here. So from the expense name till units, from column B till column G, these are the entries that you are supposed to make whenever an expense occurs. Everything else after this is automatically calculated. So this table is divided into 3 parts. So this is the first part. So this would be the first part. And you will see that it will normally have this light blue color in it. I will explain in a moment why these are in pink color. The next section is from this column till column L. So these are calculated automatically. Here you can see that the amount payable, the tax rate is coming again from the previous table, and this calculates the tax amount, and this is the amount excluding tax in case you need it. And there is a description column that if you want to write some notes, you would, but in most cases you won't. This is where you're supposed to enter your expenses. Now I have added all of these just in case that when you are making an entry, you want to see that who is the vendor's name, what is the payment method, the unit rate, which category it's part of, and which department it's part of. So these are all obviously picked up from the previous table. You're not supposed to enter any of this. These will be populated automatically, and these are just here so in most cases you won't see them. So, but if in some cases, if you want to check that have I entered the right expense, you can just move your cursor on the right side just to get an idea that okay, this is the right expense that I've entered. And here you're supposed to enter all your expenses. Now these ones which are turned pink, these are the ones. So there are 2 cases. So first is that you haven't made the payment yet and the deadline has crossed. So in that case, this will turn pink. So if I make this payment of this expense, let's say you have this advertising online expense. So let's say I made a payment right now. So I type in 25, let's say 26, and it will turn blue because I know that I have made this payment. So if you haven't made the payment and the deadline has crossed, then these will turn pink. So you have to ensure that none of these should go pink. That is, you're supposed to pay those expenses within the agreed timeline, which is the payment deadline here. And let's say if a deadline changes, let's say you talk to this vendor, the vendor's name is, let's say, vendor 11. So you talk to this guy and he says, okay, maybe you can pay me by February 15th. Then you can just change the date to February 15th here, and this will turn it to normal, to blue. And now you know that you are not supposed to pay this till 15th. That is like the first part. So here you're supposed to make the entries. So let's say you want to make the next entry. Here you will select the very next row just to ensure, because this is the table, so you're supposed to keep it consistent. Let's say you write in packaging and you enter, and then you select the actual expense that you want to select. So let's say you say security, you write the date here, let's say 26, and you're supposed to pay, let's say, in March, okay, and payment made on is fine. Days, let's say security days are, let's say, 15, and you have used 1 unit, and everything else will be calculated automatically, including the vendor name, the payment method, the unit rate, and its utilities, let's say it's part of this business unit or this project. So these will be entered automatically. So here you're supposed to enter the expenses. So this is your day-to-day sheet where you're supposed to enter the expenses. As soon as an expense occurs, or as soon as you know you're supposed to make an expense, then you will write it here. So once you are done with these entries, so in these two sheets you're supposed to do the entries, the next sheets will give you the analysis pertaining to this. So the very next is the overdue expenses. So here you can see the ones which are pink in color. So you will see all of these here. So if you want to see the expenses for a specific year, you're supposed to select the year from this drop down, and within that year, if you want to see an expense related to a specific month, then you will select the month here. Now ideally this sheet should be empty at all times. That is, there is no expense which is overdue from your part. But in case there is, then you're supposed to check this sheet first just to ensure that you pay those expenses first and foremost because they are overdue. Now here, let's say you go to 2024 and there is an expense overdue. Now this is a no-no because let's say we are setting in 2026 and this payment is still overdue, so you're supposed to pay these $10 ASAP. The next would be, and the payment deadline is 24 November, so the month of November is applicable in this case. If you go to 2025, you are supposed to pay a total of 1,987, which is overdue. Keep that in mind. And this is the bifurcation, and the payments deadline were these 11th November till 18th November. Now you go to 2026, and these are the expenses which are overdue. And if you want to see an expense that is for a specific month, you will select that from the drop down. And please keep in mind that this drop down is alphabetically arranged. I was not able to do it monthly wise, but you're supposed to see this. So if you select November, it will give you an error because all these are in the month of Jan. So if I select November, it will tell you that select an year and delete any entry in a month. So if you just delete this, then this will work every time. So here for 2026, the overdue expenses are $944. Here for 2025, it's 1987, and here for 2024, it's $10. And let me just give you an example for, let's say, 2026. So for 2026, advertising online is expense 24, let's say, and payment date is, let's say Feb. Okay, and if I go back, then I can see that two of the expenses are in Jan and one is in Feb. And if you just want to see the expenses for Feb, then you can select Feb and it will show you only that expense. And for Jan, again, you can select Jan and it will show you those two expenses. And if you select November, it will give you an error. In that case, just delete the months and it will give you the overdue expenses for that specific year. In this case, that is 2026. So this is obviously very important, and you have to ensure that you pay these expenses as they are overdue. The next one is your main dashboard or main command center. Now this is giving you the total. So the total expenses that you have incurred, which includes the ones that are not due and which are overdue, are $4,729. Out of which $10 were part of 2024, 3,775 for 2025, and 944 is 2026. Now this is your analysis part. This will give you an idea of the timeline. This will give you that how much of this total is overdue. Let's say 3,192 is overdue and 337 you have already paid. Now these are divided into, let's say, different categories. This is for the vendors. So for these vendors, this much expense, 4,729, is bifurcated among these vendors like this. Among all your departments or units or projects, it's like this. For all expense categories, this is like this. And for this, you can also drill down as there are plus buttons on the side. So if you click that, it will give you the exact expense detail as well. And the last one is the payment method, that how much each payment method contributed to your expenses of 4,729. And then you have all these slicers here. So if you want to filter out it year-wise, let's say you want to see what happened in 2025, you click 2025, and then it will give you the expenses related to 2025 only. And if you want to go back, you click this button. And if you want to go to a specific month, you can go there as well. One more thing, this timeline can be zoomed in and zoomed out. So in this case, this is zoomed in, zoomed out, sorry. So you only see the years. If you use the plus button, it shows you the data month-wise. So in 2024 for December, in 2025 for November and December, and in 2026, it's going to show you for Jan. Now, as you might remember that we entered one thing that is related to Feb. So just to be on the same page, once you are ready to analyze, you're supposed to refresh these filters. So what you're supposed to do is that you select one of the tables, maybe let's say this chart, and then you click on refresh, and then you click on refresh all, and this will update everything. So right now, because we entered one more expense, so it says 4,969 right now, and this is the analysis that you can see. And then if you zoom in one more time, you can see the exact dates on which these expenses occurred. So I will go back to the year view, and here you can see all the expenses. So we get $10, 3,291, and 1,668. Now you know how to use this slicer, and then this slicer is for not due and overdue. This is for the vendor, this is for the business unit, the payment method, the expense category, and the actual expense. So let's say I am not interested in the payments that I have already made. I'm interested in the overdue expenses. So I am interested in this amount, 2,941. So what I would do is that I would select this slicer, and it will filter everything down to the overdue expenses. So the overdue expenses, the most important one is that I am supposed to pay $1,026 to vendor 10, and then go on and go forth. Let's say I have $1,000 to spend. Maybe I can spend it on this, or maybe I can pay the last 3 months. Depending on how you want to go about it, you can do it as you wish. And then if you want to clear this filter, you click this button and you are back to normal. So this is like your main command center. The last two are, this is the expense category analysis. So this is divided between, again, the overdue and not due tasks. So again, we are working with $4,969, and we have the same amount here. So these are the categories of the expenses, and these are divided in two parts. The green part is the one that is not due, and the red part is the due one. And again, if you want to see only the overdue one, you can click this button and it will filter it out like you saw in the previous dashboard. And you can use all of these filters as well. And these are bifurcated into both ones. So the green one is again here, the not due, and the $233. Let's say in this case it's the due one. And of course, this gets very handy. And again, if you want to go into a specific category, let's say you want to see what's inside, let's say payroll and people. So you go here, you click payroll and people, and then if you click plus, it will show you the exact expenses. So for payroll and people, you have $812 for freelancers slash contractors, this expense, and the salary expense is 471. And if you click minus, you're back there, and if you click this one, then you are back to the main one. If you want to see everything at one time, it tends to get really messy. I will not recommend it. So the way to see it is again the same thing. So let's say you want to see some specific category or categories, then you use these to filter them out first. And if you want to select multiple ones, you just hold down the control key and then select the next one as well. So let's say I've selected payroll and people, professional services, and rents and utilities. And for these three, this is the total expense. This much is not due, this much is overdue, and this much is not due. And these are the bifurcations of the exact expenses. And again, if I click minus, you will see only these three categories. And I click this button again, you will see the whole thing again. Hopefully that makes sense. The last one is the vendor analysis. So you would like to see the vendors with whom you are conducting your business, you are paying your expenses to these companies or people. And if you want to see what is happening, you can see it here. And again, let's say the overdue is 2,941 and you only want to see this bifurcation, then you will click overdue here and it will give you the exact bifurcation for that. And again, here in this case, you can see the categories on top of it as well, and then you can see the actual expenses as well. So let's say, let me give you a simple example. So let's say we go into vendor 5. So I will try to find vendor 5 from this part. So I have vendor 5 right here. I click this. So I am only looking at vendor And then if I click plus, I will go into the category. So it's payroll and people and operating expenses. So in these two categories, I am taking services from this vendor. And again, if I want to go to see which exact expenses are occurring, I will click that and I will see that these are the expenses which are occurring when it comes to vendor 5. So again, if you want to go back, I will click the minus button twice and then click this button and I'm back to normal. So hopefully this helps. And once again, thank you for the product. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and hopefully it will help you in managing your expenses.